Welcome to the Formula Podcast, something I've been wanting to do for a long time. Living in the CPG space that I do with Elite Fill, come across all kinds of brands that are starting, mid-sized brands, and we've just become an extension of the brand as we've grown. And as I started to think about the guest for this show and who I would bring, it took me about 10 seconds, and I thought of the perfect person that can talk about probably one of the fastest growing brands in the CPG space and the wellness space that I've ever been a part of or seen, and that's Liquid IV. Everyone knows who they are now. About 10 years ago, you had no idea. Fast growing company, and I'm here with a good friend of mine and employee number one, Sean Lavin.
Cool. Happy to be here.
Sean.
This is cool.
It's going to be great, man.
Thanks, Steve, for inviting me.
Absolutely. So tell us, employee number one, how many years ago? And if you can just kind of touch on the meteoric rise.
Hard to say. Thank God this is more than 5 minutes. But it started in 2015. So 2015, end of 2015. At that time, two founders were running the business, which was Hayden Fullstone and, of course, Brandon Cohen. And those two guys met university, college. They came out and they had an idea, and it just kind of rolled into this startup. They were both athletes. They both were really interested in their wellness, but ironically typical from college when you're just kind of thinking of, hey, we're in this entrepreneurial program. What could be a business idea? And it was hangover cures. So the truth of the matter is Liquid IV started off as a hangover cure, but maturity came into being. And really this dictates when you think about coming up with a great idea, you have to be willing to open up some of that white space a little bit, like that free thinking. And some concepts mature or change, and it's okay. You ride with it.
Didn't they start as a liquid?
Yeah. So actually, they actually did. They did start off as a liquid. Like I said, it was really a hangover cure. So it was just, throwing everything in the sink into it in terms of really wild ingredients, all natural at the time, of course. And they understood because of sports that Gatorade was a big deal. But more importantly, the opening came in when Brandon was working over a summer and he found a friend of his who was a professional baseball player for the Diamondbacks, that the athletes weren't drinking Gatorade to hydrate. They were drinking Pedialyte, which was what the hell? These guys are drinking baby formula.
Yeah. Known for kids.
Yeah, known for kids. Instead of Gatorade or any other type of sports drinks. And it was really clear. The baby formulas actually worked. By design, they were pure hydration replenishment. Whereas Gatorade, been around for...
Water at the end.
Yeah,
of the day,
I mean,
right?
it's flavored, a little bit of electrolytes, mostly sugar. And, they've obviously transformed the industry, but not necessarily for the athletes. And so I think that was the awakening. So yes, to your point, they came back, hey, let's make something with this, except we can make it better. Let's direct it towards adults. Actually, that's what changed it from a hangover to let's hit the bigger market. Let's get everybody. And so that was their first shot at a alternative sports drink that actually dealt with solving hydration needs.
So the direction went more from seeing the athletes to the starting over hangover, and then realizing that's a small market. Let's go after the athletic market that pro athletes are drinking Pedialyte. So the light bulb went off at that point.
Absolutely.
There's a space for this.
Sure. I mean, there is a space. And I think they went a little bit further. And that actually came over probably another couple of years. But sports, was their bread and butter, is what they believed in, and what they understood. As being, hey, if athletes are drinking it, everybody else will follow. Yeah. What really was the awakening is doing a little bit more studying. And when I joined in 2015, it was just the beginning of their transition into going into a powder. And what was interesting about that was, now you can imagine when you do a startup, you have a product, you have to start producing a lot of it, you have to go and sell it, you got to put it in store or find a way to start moving this product. It's very expensive to ship heavy goods, as you know. I mean, just
Shipping
imagine
water.
shipping water. Shipping water is expensive. And when you have a zero budget, you're blasting through any type of monies that you've saved that you're putting down. You have other investors coming in, and most of it is just going right out the door in terms of shipping. And it's expensive, actually expensive to make. Harder to make, there were too many ingredients. They had to start winnowing down the ingredients. That was another kind of moment of change, was that too many ingredients expensive, bring costs down, which was the smartest thing you could have ever done at that time, because all of the rest was just pixie dust. And focus on actually what the ingredients that you need, that work, that actually are meaningful, that are functional and efficacious, that kind of thing. Just hone in on that. But just pragmatic decisions of how do we survive? Well, we can't keep trying to position ourselves as a liquid beverage and compete with the big dogs
that own the space.
Impossible. And so when they went to a place and they found that powder could be an alternative, and you just mix it with water, that was a tiny market. It was almost like a non-existent.
Stick packs were just starting to come to fruition at that time.
I mean, exactly. I mean, you had, at best, you had like lemonade in a stick or something with a lot of sugar or whatever those, like crystal lights, right? So, I mean, really, how in the world? But they needed to stay alive. And that's when I joined them. They had one flavor. It was a lemon lime in a stick pack that you really, it was like trying to open that was nasty. It was like you had to battle that stick to get it open just to have a drink. If you didn't have a pair of scissors on you, good luck. But that's what it was. And it was so thick because they were trying to protect the ingredients from,
oxidation
and getting moisture in there. And it really was like a vault. It was insane. And I remember joining him, and I said, God, I was just trying to figure out what in the world are these guys doing? And maybe to give you a little bit of background on that was, I knew we shared a contact of a friend. Brandon at the time had a new investor, gave him a good, it was about $100,000. He says, all right, Brandon, I'm going to give you money to really take this business to the next place, but you guys don't know how to run a business. And he didn't mean that in a way that they didn't have the skill set. They were young, but they didn't, the core was operations. They were intuitively, they were visionaries, and both Hayden and Brandon. But what they didn't have was operational sense. They didn't have experience in operations. I had a deep background in operations in all types of businesses. And I have opened and started a couple different businesses on my own. So I've dabbled in the entrepreneurial many times. My parents are not entrepreneurs. So that spirit of entrepreneurial, it was just like built in me anyway. I was actually working on another business at the time. And anyway, we were connected by a mutual friend. And he said, you got to talk to Brandon and Hayden. They're working on something, and I think you guys would click. And he said that because he knew that it wasn't just an entrepreneurial spirit. It was not about just starting another business, but that these guys were really, really, really deep into the idea of a purpose-driven business. And that was exactly what hooked me into, I got to meet these guys, because that's all I cared about.
Very true.
And that kind of brought, let's say, the three of us together. So yes, employee number one was just simply, they had to find someone else to join the team and
share the vision,
and then take it from a basic single flavor, very difficult to open stick pack, and see if we can scale this business into something possible.
I remember the correct me if I'm wrong, the first retail door was 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It was the first, let's say, big retail door for us. Prior to that, we were randomly around like the south Beach area. So we're talking Redondo Beach, Hermosa, Manhattan Beach. And we were in we were in liquor stores, a few gas stations.
I remember Brandon doing the guerrilla marketing out there himself, just passing them out.
It literally was. And then with 7-Eleven, the good news is that we didn't really, because you didn't have to go to a corporate office to get product into a 7-Eleven. You can kind of hit
regional,
right?
To the LA market to start.
They were almost like, owned, small business owned in a way. So franchisee model, exactly. And so able to kind of negotiate that in. But it sounded like it was a big name, 7-Eleven's a very big.
Everyone knows them.
Everybody knows them. So getting into 7-Eleven was like this really big thing. Didn't make us much money, but it was actually is a funny story to that. In order for you to grow, and this was how it was for us at least, to get into the bigger market. You want to get into Target. You want to get into, any of the big CPG companies, platforms. You had to literally show sales.
Sell through.
Absolutely. Your sell through. And so we got into 7-Eleven. Really cool. So we set a whole plan. We called every one of our friends to go and hit those 7-Elevens and buy. Just keep buying. But we also knew that the only way to entice them to buy it is if we paid them back for it. So we used up a lot of our own money.
Marketing 101, baby. Love it.
So yeah,
every brand has that story, right? At some point.
I think so.
You just had to roll up your sleeve and get down and dirty.
Had to go do it. Yeah. Had to go do it. But yeah, things like that help.
That was great. And so what would you say was I'm sure there's many, but the fundamental reason for the mediocre growth?
Yeah.
I know the give back. I know that you were, heading that and trips to Haiti, and, we could speak on that real quickly if you'd like. But as far as what would you say put them ahead of everyone else? Was it right place, right time? Obviously that's a factor, but it was a powder. What do you think was a differentiator for Liquid IV that got so much traction so quick and to basically be the leader in the market now?
Yeah. There's a couple things, and I'm going to push away from just vision because that seems very generic, but we always talked about, finding the white space, what that blue ocean looks like. And if anybody never heard of the term blue ocean, it's old, but it's the idea that it is an area where there's less competition. So if you're trying to dabble into a business, if it's pre-existing and it's everywhere, that's really
red ocean.
That's like red ocean, yeah. Right? But if it's there somewhere, it's just not really big in the market. That's kind of the blue ocean. That's the place you want to play in. So really what made Liquid IV so interesting is that by design, here we had a product that was a real science-backed, ingredient-based product that solved a problem, which was hydration. So using basically an oral solution to hydrate quicker than just water alone, using two ingredients, sodium and glucose, as a carrier, was something that the hydration industry didn't simply have.
So some scientific backing.
Exactly.
The claim.
So what happened was this was accidental, is that we popped into what they call today functional food, functional beverage. It did not exist. There was sport, there was just straight water, and then of course you have your liquor, your sodas, and other things. But no one was really defining a space known as functional. And so that wasn't necessarily, it was almost intuitive, but it wasn't, we didn't think through that in the manner that it became. And I can say this, though, it's more common today to see businesses that, and everybody's paying attention, what are trending or what's working. And it could be ingredient based, it could be format based, but whatever you're trending, then everybody starts coming in.
Right.
Everybody's coming in. And that's not the way Liquid IV began, how we operated. We were almost naive to a point that we had something, we believed in it, we started developing it. We didn't have anything to compare it to. We weren't trying to compete with anybody. We suddenly realized we were in a category that no one else was in. And so it was really about just trying to get attention. And nobody wanted to pay any attention because we weren't like anything that they were selling in their store. We weren't like anything that was selling online. We weren't like anything else. And it was really hard to try to make maybe a comparison to Pedialyte, because Pedialyte had established itself in the market for children, for infants, for a specific.
And now I see them with adult.
Yes, and now you see them with adult people. Yeah,
only like, 10
you
years
shifted
later.
in there.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that was pretty much it. So what made us trend was that we put a lot of the effort into, you can call it guerrilla marketing, but it really was, we unlocked this one thing, which we call sticks in hand. And sticks in hand, which is literally our stick of liquid IV, we felt strongly that if we just put it in the hands of as many people as possible for them to try it, the conversion rate would work for us.
If you have a great product, people will buy it.
People will buy it.
In the reorder business.
In the reorder business. And we were very successful at, when we got into Whole Foods, as an example, which was a beautiful market for us because it really hit a couple things. One, here around LA, it's a very unique crowd, culture in LA. They're more accepting of novel, new things.
Educated.
They're educated. And when you're in Whole Foods, by the way, they have a little bit of extra money. And so they're willing to buy something
Pay for a premium brand, which Liquid IV has
I guess we
always
were.
been from
Yeah,
the top. Yeah,
absolutely. So we staged and positioned ourselves there. So we would have a little table, people coming in and out. We would be able to kind of demo our product, showcase our product, have people sample the product more than anything else. That we would just be handing out free samples. When you have a brand new business and you have a real tight budget and limited inventory, it's really hard for people who invested in the business to understand you're giving away most of it. But we knew that if we didn't give it away, it was really more. It was so hard to get them to buy it.
Yeah. The customer acquisition and trying to educate them on all the things that are behind a new powder that's in the hydration space.
Right.
You're used to a liquid. Yeah, a lot of challenges.
A lot of challenges, yeah.
Makes total sense. I think a huge part of Liquid IV, which I think most people know, but maybe not the majority, is the dedication to sustainability, and something that you were the driver for that, for the company. Yeah. Could you speak a little bit about that, about, what you were, your vision for sustainability? Because I know you were deep in it. You were invited to the World Health Organization to speak on the give back programs of Liquid IV. A lot of things that Liquid IV did that I don't think many people know. If you wouldn't mind speaking on that a little bit, on your sustainability stance and clean labeling and all that you kind of brought to the company.
Sure. I mean, and I won't take too much credit in a way that there's always been. Driving. I mean, listen, there's always been
culture for sure from day one.
For sure. From day one. And there's always been a shift in, I think, with a lot of startups in the last 10 years that sustainability is really important globally. And I was a factor in that because I've been a consumer. I've been an advocate for, responsibility. And I love businesses, and I love whether you're just a startup business or you're a mature business that's been around with hundreds of millions of dollars. I think that we have a pledge to better the world. There's a net positive effect, all of that. So here on Liquid IV, and fortunately with the team that we had, we were all like right in saying we got to come up with something better. I don't have a background, or I didn't have a background in anything with sustainability. I wasn't a packaging engineer. I didn't have the awareness on how to do something, but I had the passion, I had the interest. And so that led me down a really interesting road of what can we do to lay the foundation of being sustainable, and how do we communicate that to our consumers, and what does it mean?
Why does it matter?
And why does it matter? Yeah, exactly. And so there was a couple areas that I thought, well, this might be a really good way to kind of intro our business to other people, to consumers, and connect with them beyond just saying, hey, this is amazing hydration and this is all the good things it can do for you from that perspective. But how do I articulate that in a different way? So there was a couple areas that became almost synonymous with Liquid IV. One was packaging. So yes, we had a stick pack that we had to figure out how do we convert that from a direct to the landfill to a, I don't know, compostable, can it be recyclable? What can we do? And so there were some challenges in terms of just finding materials that could do that. But
First
then
birthday.
Yeah. Oh, it was hard. And Steve, I mean, listen, I reached out to you. I can't remember it right in the beginning about all this. But you go out and you start looking at statistics. And you go out, when I say go out, like you have the main product, but the main product sits in a box or some sort of other package. And then you have your secondary and your tertiary packages. And so everything that's going out, look at the material and then just kind of learn a little bit more about that material. And I started experimenting and so a great example of being able to do that and how it just really, I think, shifted and changed the way we did business was we would do these limited time offerings. This was a really great platform for us because it was really hard, by the way, to scale all of your flavors. And you just don't go from one flavor to 10 flavors. You had to do it little by little. And every time we would introduce a new flavor, we would say, well, let's turn this into some sort of like influencer experience. Let's turn it into a box and hand it out to influencers. And let's just be kind of crazy and do something different each and every time. So I use that to say, well, this is a perfect platform to talk a little bit more about not just the flavor, but the packaging or sustainability. So it's ingredients or finding a flavor that came from a source that was really, really cool to talk about. Sea berry as an example. Sea berry, also known as sea buckthorn, is a wild berry commonly found in the Himalayas. And
I don't see that as a flavor.
And like, who sees it as a flavor? Everybody just thinks of your traditional, like, strawberry, grape, fruit punch, right? And by the way, maybe this will also help, is that not only did I join the company to head its operation, but we didn't have anybody running R&D.
Oh, you wore like 15 hats.
Flavors.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, all that. And so I took that over. And my background is I've actually had a business in wine. So I'm a little bit of a wine geek. And so, how I look and view.
And an amazing chef, by the way.
I like food. Can you tell? Not really.
No.
But it's like taking what you know and then putting that through to your business. And so flavor, and I mean, they looked at me and said, Sean, you handle that because we don't know enough about it. And you're really crazy and passionate.
Wheelhouse.
That was my wheelhouse. Little did I know that I would be actually changing how people curated flavor for the functional beverage industry. But this just came from me growing up overseas. I grew up in Brazil and in Singapore and in Chile, and I lived in Europe, and all of that, which didn't mean anything until I started Liquid IV. And then I started pulling from all of my childhood and everywhere else, these fruits and flavors and concepts that I was in love with. And then I would introduce that into the flavor. So I never thought from a marketing or a sales strategy to say, after lemon lime, let's come up with our next flavor. What could it be? Like, what could it be, that flavor? Typically, you would say, well, let's do strawberry, or let's do
your basics.
Basic, generic apple, or whatever it may be, right? And I didn't think that way. I just said, oh, well, what could be not only a tasty flavor, but brings wellness to the experience. And acai berry, to me, I lived in Brazil, as I mentioned, and so acai is one of the most popular.
That was the second flavor, right?
It was number 2. Yeah. And so to go in with an acai, most people didn't even pronounce acai. It was acai. It was just finding its place mostly in California.
Everywhere.
Yeah, now it's everywhere. But it was barely even like a spot. People didn't even know it was a fruit. Well, anyway, that was a hit, because once you try it, you're gonna like it. I just went with that premise. Yeah. Number 2 was passion fruit, which again, now everybody kind of digs, and no, love the name, by the way. Nothing, I mean, passion for it.
Right.
It's like, that's,
Very
and
sexy.
it's, the flavor is just so like mellow, and it's perfect, and it's just delicious, and it's thirst quenching. But it evolved anyway. I can go into the flavors forever, but going to Sea Berry again, every flavor had a story. There was a reason behind these flavors, whether it was to design it with a celebrity when we did a limited time offering.
Seed round, right?
Like we've done that. Or those seed rounds with like,
Justin
Bieber and Steve Aoki, and like talking to them and designing flavors with them. It was amazing. Or they would come from a trip to, in this case, Nepal, which was part of our give back, was part of our impact work. We gave back to the communities using not just profits from Liquid IV. At the time, for every sale we made, we would donate a serving of Liquid IV in kind. And so we partnered with a lot of really big organizations, specifically Direct Relief. That was like, it is probably to this day the largest humanitarian disaster relief organization in the world. Amazing organization. We were so lucky to get in early enough with them. So our product was literally being used globally in disasters. And in order to do that, by the way, it also solidified the quality of Liquid IV as a product. In order to be used in disaster relief, in order to be verified and validated by the World Health Organizations, in order to be used by really important organizations that are in the field doing the work that are incredible, for them to replace the oral rehydration solution that they're buying out of pocket with our product, which we donated, it did say everything. And that's how, as much as we are a fun, the business is fun. It was all about flavor. It was all about all these things. But the real North Star was, we're here to change the world. We're here to make a difference. We're here to make lives better. We're here to give back. And I think that was just the engine that moved us forward. And there was always that. And so coming up with flavors, we were on a trip to Nepal. It was the first trip that we actually could bring a bigger crew, including Brandon. And so Brandon, co-founder Brandon joined myself. I organized the whole trip and two others. And we brought another guy to shoot it with his camera. And here we were, really in the middle of nowhere. I mean, just to get to where we were, we didn't just go to Kathmandu. We actually got on another plane, another bus. It's literally an old story, to get all the way up to the tippy top of of a mountain, the Himalayas, to a tiny little remote village. It wasn't even a village. It was like a little knoll on the top of a mountain, to help bring medical products up to the top. And we did this with our partner Direct Relief. So we funded this whole project to bring medical products up to this tiny remote village, which hadn't seen anything. They hadn't seen a doctor for 10 years.
Wow.
And here we were going there. Of course, we brought Liquid IV with us, and that gave us a chance to talk a little bit about the importance of washing your hands, drinking well, and here we were. Anyway, it was an amazing trip. We documented it. It was emotional. It was like, it did everything that it needed to do. On our way down the mountain, the doctor that was with us, his mom was also in the little caravan of vehicles going down this mountain. She stopped the vehicle, and we all pulled to the side, and she went over the side. I mean, it's crazy. It's a precipice. And she started yelling, "Sea berries." Now, I was the only other person in our group that knew exactly what she was talking about, because I had just been doing a lot of research of that area. And I was like, sea berries, man, I want to taste it, because they're wild. They grow wild. They're actually not, this is sustainable. They grow wild. They're not farmed in a traditional manner. So they're picked in a wild presence. So they're one of the most sustainable berries, fruits that you can possibly grow in that region of the world.
Interesting.
It's really, really interesting. And anyway, she was super delighted. It is a super fruit. So it has,
Antioxidants. And
Oh, it's got omegas and antioxidants. It's got everything. And she's pulling it out. She's so interesting. I dive in there with her. There's some film on that. I was trying it and tasting it and passing it around. And I remember giving it to Brandon, and Brandon's like eating this, and he's like going, oh, man.
I can see this in the
I think this is our next flavor. and that's kind of like how things progress. And to be able to tell a story in the end of the day, that is all of the things that combine a limited time offering to a consumer to retell the story, hydration, our give back, flavor, all of these things.
Doing all the right things.
The right things, right. And then helping understand, like connecting, like what is sustainable about, farming a berry like this, and why would you support that? We're supporting another group of people that, they're not funded by big corporations. And so there's also those elements in there. Yeah. And then, of course, you do the extra stuff where let's put it in a packaging that is completely sustainable, that is removed from our current packaging.
Got it.
So move away from your traditional packaging. And then the package itself is a billboard of something 100% sustainable, including the stick packs, everything. Yes. And it cost us a lot more money. So it wasn't necessarily we could flip a switch and make that like permanent or scalable, but it wasn't about driving an opportunity for bigger sales.
Yeah, because obviously
it wasn't going to do that, or at least not directly, but it was driving awareness.
And the purpose-driven
and the purpose, which was so important because it was our North Star. Like we preached it every day.
Oh, you lived it.
We lived it. Yeah,
absolutely.
And that meant part of the whole culture was we're not just any company. We're a company that thinks about that.
We're going to go and ourselves and our founder, and we're going to drive up and
we're going to do that
no one would do.
Right.
And we're not doing it for publicity because no one really knew.
No, we weren't very good at that.
Yeah, you're just doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And I think everything else, fell into place.
And I think when going back to that, a question that you said before, like what are the things that kind of made Liquid IV what it was is fundamental. Well, the differentiator ultimately, let's say the secret sauce was really in the vision, was really in executing on a couple things, and the idea that you're trying to be purpose-based, that you're putting the planet and other people ahead of you, ahead of profits. I used to always try to explain that Liquid IV in a traditional, let's say, business model, it's a triangle. The top of your the profits, you're always aiming for the profits to the top, and everything kind of supports that.
The
foundation below that all supports like cutting, those small group of people with the profit. And I always believe in flipping it. The idea that Liquid IV really was, in essence, an NGO, almost like an organization that was not for profit business, but we self-funded.
Yeah.
The idea of being a real change maker. And I think that at least mentally it made a difference to us that we were just self-funding doing good.
Yep. Right.
And so as long as the sales came in and we kept on doing really well with that, it's actually helping us fund the things that matter to us.
The givebacks, right?
Yeah.
The givebacks.
Just anything like that. Anything just tweaking and changing the world and doing and ultimately what I also really appreciated from Brandon, and he was younger than me, but he taught me a lot, which was this effusive like mindset of he was an incredible Laker fan. Like he was like a diehard Laker, and specifically his favorite player was Kobe Bryant. And what he learned from Kobe and kind of passed down was this idea of the Mamba mentality, which he used to preach like crazy, of just being like so hyper-focused, so like the idea, the spirit of competitive spirit. And I've played sports, love sports. And you're a sport person. Like we talk about sports in many, many ways. But if you think about your team as a group of athletes, and every goal is almost like a playbook to winning, and winning is the ultimate. and then you hit your North Star and all that stuff, but we have to win.
Yeah.
We're always going to try to win. That mentality of winning at all costs was something we bought into. That was easy for me.
No doubt.
But every person we brought into the company had that mindset. And an interesting fact, really fascinating fact, when we sold to Unilever, which was just a few years ago, we had already grown to a very sizable business, probably a $250 million or something at that point. And you know how many people were working at Liquid IV full time when we sold?
I want to say like 10, maybe.
Almost. We were just about 30. But I mean, to give you an idea,
crazy.
It's crazy.
$250 million
Where
in volume.
Where really, and it took another year post acquisition for us to even get close to doubling that.
Yeah, then it just...
And then it's grown since. But it goes to show you that the way you can make, it's so well oiled.
Lean and mean, baby.
Lean and mean, and we had good players. They were well positioned. Yes.
Culture, lean, mean, team mentality.
100%.
Us against the world.
Yeah.
We're changing lives.
Totally.
How could it not work?
Yeah.
Right? So with that being said, I'm glad you brought up the Unilever purchase.
Yeah.
For anybody watching this, and again, I would love my audience to be that startup, mid-sized brand using this podcast and the guests to glean light of, oh, okay, that's a great point. I don't want to make that mistake. What would you say? I mean, I think at most every business wants to get acquired, right? That's the goal. Build it up. Have a Unilever, an Estee Lauder, someone come purchase you for $1 billion, and you ride off in the sunset, and you won the game of life. What would you say was the biggest transition from going from a private company to now a Unilever? I mean, and 30 people to 300 now. What would you say was what you guys had to be aware of in that transition to be able to go from a private to a corporate owned? What advice would you give somebody as they're going up? A couple points, actually. One, if you're a brand wanting to go into the sustainable space, which isn't going nowhere, and then two, if your ultimate goal is to get purchased, what advice would you give them? Stay true to the foundation.
I think, because it's a hard question. I think that if you start a business in order to sell the business, like your whole game,
because that wasn't Brandon's, that wasn't his goal, really, was it, or was it? It didn't seem like it to me. It seemed like it wasn't a goal. Like it wasn't a goal where that's what we talked about. Right, 3 to 5 we're selling. No, no. In fact, I think, to be honest, and there's a whole piece to that too, is that I think we sold too soon. Okay. And but there's reasons we sold it, and we got to remember that there was a COVID, and there was a big. There was a lot of things, targets on your back, by the way. When you do get to a certain size, and you're almost challenging some of the big dogs that exist out there. I'm sure, like, who the hell are these guys?
Believe it or not, I mean, you become a target.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were barely anything in the numbers game. We weren't really taking too much of anybody's pie, but it doesn't take long for them to start targeting you. It doesn't take much for these guys to kind of like bury you. So there's sometimes a fear of, oh my God, if we're not being protected well enough, especially as a little solo private business, they could find anything on us. They could bury us in one way, shape, or form. But what advice would I give is don't think about that too much, too soon, too early. I think it's really important to be in love. And it sounds corny, but be in love with your business.
Because it almost seems like if you're going into it to sell it, you're not really loving it. Because how could you, right? Because you're always looking for when I'm going to hand it off. Brandon just seemed like he was just so in love, 7 365,
and he couldn't be the only one in love. We were all in love, and you got when you get to the point, and if you're fortunate enough, if that was the plan at some point to sell it, it's also an emotional loss. It's I don't know, maybe akin to raising your kids and then they suddenly leave home or something like that. It hits you. you feel empty inside. It's really traumatic to sell a business.
So it appears to be celebrating, popping bottles. There's this probably a void feeling of, wow, I built this and now it's not mine no more. And
well, you're handing something over
yeah.
that has meant so much to you for so long, and you put your blood, sweat, and tears in it. And by the way, you know, I talk about Brandon, or I talk about Hayden, who were the founders, but really there was a very core team that all felt that.
Yeah.
We were all very much a part. That was part of our DNA as well. We were as dedicated to the business as being the original owners.
Well, I think every vacation that you went on, there was a liquid IV stick somewhere in the photo, in the ocean, on the beach. I mean, you were living it just like he was, my friend.
Well, you have to. Mm-hmm. And I really, really believe that more than anything else. It's just like fall in love hard. And whether you're the founder, a stakeholder, anything, just be in love and enjoy it, and go on vacations with it, do everything with it, make it a part of your life, make it so important to you, because then there's a realism that realistically, those are the reasons you will start seeing success come. And it is that relationship. And then if you overthink it too soon, you might jeopardize, you may self-sabotage, you may cut corners with the idea that you're just trying to sell it. It may not necessarily get very far.
Yeah.
Or it may just be a little bit hollow. I don't know. Maybe it's just the way I think. But when you're really, driven with both purpose and just like everything into it, and you see success, and you see this incredible, like, it was a little bit of a unicorn. I got to admit, I've started a lot of businesses. I've been in a lot of businesses. This is really crazy and unusual, but having seen that, it did position the business to be it was very attractive to investors. And I think part of the reason we sold was the timing, and that those investors were coming in hot at that moment.
A move had to be made, right?
And a move had to be made.
Yeah.
And I think it's all of that. But when there is timing to everything. And sometimes it's just like you're leading the charge. You're the biggest in that category, but you kind of figure if you don't sell now, you're going to lose a little bit of that
FOMO.
And it could just fall apart. It's as get a lot of advice from people you trust. Think hard. This is the big plan, and this is the big move. And don't just rely on just your gut or your instincts, but really this is something that if you're at a place where you're close enough to sell a business, it's a messy, complicated, difficult, stressful, and it brings in a lot of people you don't know, not sure if you can trust.
Yeah.
And so just surround yourself with really good people and get a lot of advice. Take your time.
Great. Okay, so then now fast forward to today, and Sean is no longer at Liquid IV,
That's
unfortunately. Right. Fortunately, unfortunately, right? There's always the different chapters in everyone's life. So now that you've started as employee one and the meteoric rise and was a huge part of Liquid IV's growth, I've seen it from my own eyes.
Yeah.
What's ahead for Sean now?
What's ahead? See, that's like the big opening question. Right. I had the fortune, obviously, of writing from like literally where we had zero sales to selling a company, and then seeing today, leaving it just a few months ago where it's as big as it could ever be. We're global. Yep. I keep saying we. There you go.
Yeah, right.
When you fall in love, it's hard.
Right,
I'm not
exactly.
a we. It was. But
I think you should continue to say we.
We are. Well, I will always be a part of it, and it was amazing. So the timing. So what made me say I need to
Decided it
step
was-
off,
yeah.
yeah, the big decision for me was not that hard. I love to build. I love the joy of competition. I love getting in the dirt. I love just that. And in a corporate, and when I say corporate world, when it's in this big multinational high level, you get lost a little bit. There's a reason that we all either fall on one side or the other of business decisions or business trajectory where you fit. I'm on the small, like, let it grow versus something that's just more established. And so Unilever was an incredible choice for Liquid IV to sell to. Great partners, and they can take it, and they also have a very strong purpose business. They're very oriented towards sustainability. They've expanded on the health and well-being. So all of those things, they were a great partner. But personally, I wanted to go and do it again. I was getting hungry to do it again. And so where am I today is that I am in this little honeymoon phase of getting to rest and relax a little bit, get recharged. But I can say that I am working on the next big thing. Pretty excited about it.
Okay.
I can't say too much right now, but what I would like to do is be invited back on at some point
100%.
to share. This is something that's going to be definitely, it will revolutionize a category. It's definitely going to distract a few people. But I can promise you there's an incredible goodness to this planet. There'll be a lot of good changes happening. And I will use the platform that I was able and fortunate enough to have with Liquid IV to kick off something that I think will do not only well, but it will do something good for this world.
Okay.
And I think from a business model, I'm really looking forward to kind of making a few changes on what we think of as a normal model for business.
Okay.
I'll mix it up a little bit.
Well, you've definitely been there from the bottom to the top, my friend, and I'm sure picked up a lot of knowledge along the way that you're willing to share. And then outside of that, I mean, do you consult? Do you do, and like if a brand wanted to go, wow, this guy's got a ton of experience, maybe I want to hire him as a consultant. Is that something?
Well, listen, honestly, I always believe in a couple of things. One is you always give back to people along the way and share knowledge. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can hook up with me anytime. I respond to every LinkedIn request, question. By all means, nothing official as a
website or anything like
no,
that. Right?
I don't. But I am always there for anybody, truly, on that piece. I always am a big practitioner even with like sustainability, we invested so much money into things like packaging, but I also believed if we discovered something, we wouldn't create a patent around it. It had to be shared. So I believe in open source. So open source on ideas, open source on technology, open source on helping. I think if you're going to really change the world and you're going to really try to help businesses make a bigger impact in this world, you have to give back to that. And so for all of y'all who are stuck, need maybe a little bit of someone to bounce ideas off of, I'm super happy to do that.
Okay, great.
And I think that
we'll put your LinkedIn address in the
for sure
below. So
anytime you need. And by the way, I also want to say this as we're wrapping up here, Steve, is like, it's really kind of a shout out to you and an example of, and for all those who are starting a business, the number one, when I talked a little bit about how important, what is that magic sauce, that secret sauce that businesses have? Ultimately, it's not just the core people that are in the business. It's the core people that surround the business, the vendors, the partners, all of those. Had we not had people like yourself I mean, we're friends, but professionally speaking, what you and your business did for Liquid IV and how we were surrounded by like-minded people like that.
Oh, we were all in for sure.
Yes, you talked about buying into it.
Yeah.
Y'all bought into Liquid IV. You bought into my vision or my, and I couldn't be more grateful, because when you're starting, you have nothing other than that to go on.
That's true.
And there was so much bigger clients and customers that you could have put more effort and time into. And so it's those things. And I think ultimately you want to have a successful business. Be good to your vendors, be good to your partners, be good to the people that work for you and with you. Make sure that they're taken care of, but also bring them on for the ride and bring them on for the long ride.
Takes a village, man. It
Totally
takes a
does.
village.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Sean, for coming on. Appreciate you being the first guest.
Hey.
You know how to reach out to Sean. I'll have his link down in the bottom for LinkedIn. Amazing guy, great friend, a very traveled, cultured guy. He would be a great consultant should you have any questions. Thank you for watching the first episode of The Formula. There'll be many more to come.